all of us are being scapegoated for what's happening, but we're not given the tools to be successful, but we're making do. And a lot of schools are actually doing well, and a lot of students are doing well. That is the story that is not being told, and that is what the Truth Meter is going to highlight. So a lot of these problems that you see, the Truth Meter is going to have solutions and solve them. For instance, we're going to highlight the successes of public schools and schools in general, just like we're going to highlight when there's policy that is wrong, such as, in our opinion, the voucher system, taking money from public schools and sending them to private schools. That is a problem. Or the unconstitutional funding of schools in Ohio. That's where I'm from. That is a problem. And the Truth Meter will point that out. See, you need independent media to point these things out, because if we don't do it, who will? Welcome to the Truth Meter Podcast. This is your boy, T Mac. I'm excited about this episode today because I'm going to show you some visuals or some slides about why the Truth Meter exists. I have 4 pillars, and I think you're going to be excited to hear me express those pillars. And I'm an educator at heart, so, I love visuals. And so I'm going to incorporate some visuals here. There are 4 pillars of why the Truth Meter exists. And as I was creating this platform, I thought about why I want to have a podcast. Why do I want to have a media group? And that's an episode for another day. But I am very proud of why this platform is created. I take pride in the small wins and why the Truth Meter is even called the Truth Meter. Quick story, it's called the Truth Meter because in 2020 during the pandemic, we all were locked down or what have you. And I was just sick and tired of, narratives in general, but I'll get more specific in regards to my community. But I was just sick and tired of narratives, not being truthful, you know what I mean? And so I said, well, you know what? Why don't I come up with my own platform? So long story short, I said, we need to start telling the truth. You know what I'm saying? And I came up with the Truth Meter, and I thought about, a barometer. We need to put that pressure on the truth. It needs to be to the top. You know what I'm saying? Like a blood pressure barometer. That's an oxymoron, I know, and that's how I came up with the Truth Meter. So it was crazy how I came up with the visuals and everything. So I just want to get to tell you all how I came up with this platform. So why the Truth Meter exists. So, there's a gap in our community, and if you look on here, obviously you'll see what happens when other people tell our story. Folks, when other people start telling our story, that's when it gets convoluted. And, the storytelling, the representation, the trust, and the truth, and if you read the slide here, it says the Truth Meter closes the distance between the stories our communities live and the stories the world is told. That right there, to me, is so profound because there's always a gap in how the world perceives our community and how the story is told. The world perceives Black men as all of us being thugs and gangsters when that could be further from the truth. The world perceives Black men not taking care of their children when there was a study that says the majority of fathers happens to be Black men who take care of their children. We have to start crafting that narrative. And I can't say that enough. We have to tell our own story. We have to be responsible for the stories that come out of our community. We have to be the ones who craft that narrative, control the narrative, not rely on legacy media, rely on independent media. We have to do that. So that's what the Truth Meter does. That's why I created this platform. Okay, so here are the 4 reasons this platform absolutely had to exist. And it's because my story. I wanted to let the world know who Timothy Paul McKinney Jr., T-Mac, is and what his story is. And basically, I came from having a 1.69 GPA in high school to being a man who persevered and was able to garner 3 degrees, 1 in communications from Central State University, 2 masters, 3 licenses, a teaching license, a leadership license, and then now a superintendent license. And that story needs to be told because young African-American males need to understand that there is an alternative pathway in life. And Black culture, my community, truth, context, and narrative ownership. Again, I don't want to get too much more in the weeds, but we need to tell our truth and what our culture is about and what so what are some of the amazing things that our culture have to provide? A lot of times in history, there's a lot of whitewashing going on, even in the books that we teach our kids in school. And with the federal government now banning books, that's just facts. If you get mad, kick rocks, because they are trying to ban books. They are trying to erase our history. So what we have to do is, as a community, tell our stories and control our narrative. Black educators, listen, part of the issue is in education in general, but only 2% of educators of the teaching workforce are African-American males, while I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, 15 to 16 to 17% of the student population, at least here in Ohio, is African-Americans. And that's a balance that has to be equalized a little bit. And Black educators, I know me personally, I've had certain struggles and certain issues in this particular profession that I have had to overcome. The politics, the messiness. We have a unique story. It is incumbent upon me as a Black educator and now a leader to give that guidance to other Black educators, particularly teachers. That's why I've created a Black toolkit, and I'll be giving that information out to Black educators to help them cultivate and navigate this space that we call education. And the last pillar, and number 4, is the profession. We have to advocate for our profession. And that's what the Truth Meter does. I'm an activist. And people think an activist is a person who is, militant all the time and this, that, and the other. But you must advocate for your profession. I remember my school law professor once told me, he said, if you're going to be in educational leadership, you must advocate for your profession, for your community, and for your students. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, that's good. But I believe in that. I believe in advocating for my profession because I believe in it. I believe it's necessary for what we do. Every grown person has been taught by a teacher, maybe not in the traditional sense, but your first teacher in life was a parent. You must advocate for children. Children are the most vulnerable population in this world, and we must protect them. You must advocate politically for your profession. So that's what advocacy means to me. And if you are an educator and you're not advocating for your profession, you might want to get out. That's just my personal opinion on that. Okay. So, obviously the first pillar was the 1.69 GPA. multiple degrees, educator license, and the truth meter, I tell the complete story, the struggle, the rejection, the discipline, the growth, and the purpose behind that achievement. And all I want to say about that is, I am so proud of myself. If anybody's not going to give me kudos, I'm going to give myself kudos, because I don't think you all understand how difficult that journey really was. It was a journey. I'll just say that. And I learned so much about myself. I learned resilience. I learned grit. I learned how to persevere. So this slide says your lowest moment does not control your final destination. Man, that is so true. Because one of my lowest moments in my life was this 1.69. And look at me now. I'm a success. However people want to, whatever they want to say, I am successful. I am an administrator. I have been in education for 25 years. I received a communication degree. I had 2 masters. I have a superintendent license. I, by all measures, am successful in my profession, and I am proud of myself. And I am a role model for students. And so that is, again, one of the pillars that the Truth Meter stand on, and I am so proud of that. Again, pillar 2, the community. And when I expounded on that, I consider myself a man of the people, of the culture. And that's just what I am. And I'm going to advocate for the community. And the Truth Meter will continue to do that. And, Black life cannot be reduced to crime, statistics, political talking points, failing schools, and negative headlines. Quote, failing schools. Because I'm sick and tired of the narrative about failing schools. We're not failures. Okay. I can do a whole soliloquy on why schools have quote unquote failed and how the system has set that up. But that's neither here nor there. But that's why we have to tell our story. And that's why school districts have to almost work their media machine like a political operation and continue to continue to send out their messaging so that they tell the world that they are not failures. That is very, very important. All right. Black educators. Again, they provide more than representation. Their work often includes protection, connection, advocacy, cultural translation, mentorship, and possibility. Responsibilities rarely named or supported. And something else about Black educators that I get upset about, because we're great teachers, we're great mentors, great protectors, we advocate, we lead, we do all of these things, but sometimes we get lost in the sauce when it comes to getting promotions. And I think there's a plethora of great Black leaders out there, and I think they need to get their just due. And also, there's something else that I don't like about, Black leaders Black educators, that we always have to solve issues when it comes to other diverse communities. And that should not just exclusively be our job. It is everyone's responsibility to be responsible for all kids. And whenever I'm called to, solve an issue with an African-American family or Spanish family or what have you, because you can't relate to them, that's a problem. So that's why Black educators are so important. But we can do the job, but it just becomes so difficult for us in regards to getting promoted because it's not many of us. I've been to a couple of conferences with superintendents, and I was the only African American there. And you look around, where's everybody at? It just becomes difficult to be in those spaces. So the Truth Meter will advocate and speak to and solve problems for Black educators and give them the knowledge and the tools to succeed in this profession. And then obviously, Educator advocacy, pillar number 4. Listen, this has to happen not only by educators, but the unions, the administrators, and I think all of us need to be in lockstep when we do this. Let me show my full face here real quick. Advocacy in these moments, in this time, is probably one of the most important pieces to being an educator in 2026. If you are not an advocate for your profession and for your students, you need to quit the profession. And I say that with all due respect, because an advocacy comes in many forms. I'm not talking about going on the picket line, union people. No, I'm talking about advocating for students. I'm talking about advocating for a policy that benefits students and your communities. I'm talking about advocating for your rights, educator rights. I'm talking about administrators like myself advocating for certain policies. I'm talking about teachers advocating for teacher policies that benefit students, that benefit teachers, because policies that benefit teachers benefit students. Policies that benefit the community, that benefit parents, advocating for parent rights. All of these things are interconnected. Educators are asked to address academics, behavior, mental health, attendance, poverty, technology, family instability, and community trauma, often without staffing, time, resources, or public trust the work requires. And that is true. Advocacy is not freedom from accountability. It is demand for fair accountability and end to scapegoating. Absolutely. Advocacy is not freedom from accountability. We are all accountable for what we do. And who's asking for freedom from accountability? It is a demand for fair accountability. I'm going to say that again. It is a demand for fair accountability and an end to scapegoating, because all of us are being scapegoated for what's happening, but we're not given the tools to be successful, but we're making do. And a lot of schools are actually doing well, and a lot of students are doing well. That is the story that is not being told, and that is what the Truth Meter is going to highlight. So a lot of these problems that you see, the Truth Meter is going to have solutions and solve them. For instance, we're going to highlight the successes of public schools and schools in general, just like we're going to highlight when there's policy that is wrong, such as, in our opinion, the voucher system, taking money from public schools and sending them to private schools. That is a problem. Or the unconstitutional funding of schools in Ohio. That's where I'm from. That is a problem. And the Truth Meter will point that out. See, you need independent media to point these things out, because if we don't do it, who will? And so, these 4 pillars are connected to one mission. My story, Black culture, Black educator, and the profession, it's all interconnected. And that's why the Truth Meter exists. Is going to tell the potential that should never be permanently defined by a number. I believe in that. I believe in these kids, even the worst of the worst kids. I believe in them. Communities must shape and protect their own narratives. We should tell our story. Overlooked voices deserve visibility, value, and memory. Our Black educators are valuable, and educators diverse in general. Our Esau educators, wonderful people. I love them. They know where I work at. I love our Esau educators. And I can hear it now. Well, I'm a great educator. All of our educators are great. All the people I work with are wonderful. But I am talking about Black educators. and where the unique struggles where I come from my perspective and my lens. I'm not backing down from that. The profession, the people who shape every profession deserves support. The Truth Meter will give that support. These 4 pillars are connected. This is where the culture meets truth. Our stories deserve more than assumptions. Our communities deserve more than negative narratives. Our educators deserve more than silence. I'm going to say that again because I just love visuals. Our educators deserve more than silence. Who is telling our story? Who is telling our story? Who? That is my question. You know, we have to tell the story of educators that are doing the right thing. We have to tell the story of our profession. We have to advocate, and we have to do what's best for our students. Hey, subscribe, share the story, support this mission, support the Truth Meter. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to, wherever you get your podcast at, and Your Truth, Apple, Spotify, hit me up there. Peace and blessings.